So this whole story kicks off with a buzz. A single notification on an encrypted app that gives us a peek behind the curtain at this wild collision of law, politics, and the press. It's all about a top federal prosecutor, the cases she's chasing, and a conversation that was, well, let's just say highly unusual.
Okay, so picture this. You're a journalist, it's a Saturday afternoon, and you get a message request on Signal. You look at the name, Lindsey Halligan, as in the interim U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia. We're talking one of the most powerful, most scrutinized prosecutors in the entire country. Your first thought? No way. This has got to be a fake.
But it wasn't a fake. The message was real. And get this, the disappearing messages feature was turned on. So let's just process that for a second. The top federal prosecutor in a massive, politically explosive case is reaching out directly to a reporter, not through official channels, but with a cryptic warning on an app where the evidence literally vanishes. And that's really the heart of it, right? Why is this happening? Because let me tell you, this is not normal, not even close. Federal prosecutors are supposed to follow this whole set of very strict rules, these long-standing norms that are all about protecting the integrity of a case. So to really get what's going on here, we've got to rewind a bit and look at how she even got this job in the first place. Lindsey Halligan's path to becoming a top prosecutor, well, it's not your usual story. She wasn't some career prosecutor who'd been climbing the ladder for decades. Nope. Her background was actually as a personal lawyer for Donald Trump, a fact that makes the timeline of her appointment pretty remarkable. Just look at how fast all of this went down. On September 19th, the U.S. attorney before her, Eric Siebert, gets pushed out. Why? Reportedly because he was hesitant to bring cases against Trump's political opponents. The very next day, the president is on social media demanding justice now against James Comey and Letitia James. And then, bam, just 2 days later, Lindsey Halligan has the job. And then what happens? Within weeks, both Comey and James get indicted by her office. It's a very straight line from a public demand to an official action. And this really just lays it all out, the massive difference between how things are supposed to work and what happened here. So on one side, you have standard DOJ protocol. You speak through court filings, you say no comment on active cases, and you use official on-the-record channels. Pretty straightforward. But on the other side, you've got Halligan's approach, direct contact on an encrypted app to talk about grand jury reporting. Legal ethics experts who looked at this basically said it shows a profound misunderstanding of the fundamental rules of the road for a prosecutor. But that bizarre text message, it ended up being way more than just an ethics headache. It actually cracked open this whole other can of worms, a much bigger, more fundamental legal problem. Was her appointment as U.S. attorney even legal to begin with? The whole legal showdown comes down to this one federal law, 28 U.S.C. Section 546. It's basically the rulebook for how you fill a U.S. attorney job on a temporary basis. And the most important part of that rulebook? It's all about the clock. 120 days. That's the magic number. The law is super clear. The Attorney General can appoint an interim U.S. attorney for 120 days, period. Not 121, not forever. The whole legal argument against Halligan is that the 120-day timer had already run out from a previous interim appointment before she was put in the job, which, if true, would make her entire appointment unlawful. And this is where it gets really wild. You want to know who wrote the definitive memo explaining why you can't just keep making new appointments after that 120-day period is up? A young DOJ lawyer back in 1986 named Samuel Alito. Yep, that's Samuel Alito, the one who's now a Supreme Court justice. His own legal reasoning from decades ago is now the very foundation of the legal challenge against Halligan today. The irony here is just off the charts. This whole legal argument that her appointment violates the Constitution because she wasn't appointed by law, if that sounds familiar, it should, because it's the exact same argument that was just used to help Donald Trump. So check this out. It's incredible. In 2024, down in Florida, Judge Aileen Cannon dismissed the documents indictment against Trump. Her reasoning? The special counsel wasn't properly authorized by law. Now flash forward, James Comey's lawyers are taking that exact same ruling and saying, hey, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If the special counsel wasn't appointed by law, then Trump's own appointee, Lindsey Halligan, wasn't either, so you have to dismiss our case too. And here it is, the absolute most unbelievable part of this whole story.
Guess who was on the legal team that made that winning argument for Trump in front of Judge Cannon? Lindsey Halligan herself. She helped create the legal precedent that is now being used to potentially blow up her own authority as a prosecutor. You just can't make this stuff up.
So you can see this isn't just some abstract legal debate for law professors. The outcome here has huge real-world consequences. We're talking about the cases she's brought for other prosecutors across the country and, yeah, for Halligan personally.
So what's on the line? Well, for starters, the massive indictments against Comey and James could just vanish, dismissed. Beyond that, this could throw other interim U.S. attorney appointments all over the country into complete chaos. And for Halligan, those text messages could trigger a serious ethics investigation, and her mere presence in the grand jury room could put her in real legal jeopardy.
And that's because of this really critical rule. It's called Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 6E, and you can think of it as the ultimate grand jury secrecy rule. It says that only authorized attorneys for the government are allowed in that room. That's it. So if a court rules that Halligan was never lawfully appointed, then she wasn't an attorney for the government. And that would mean her just being in the room was a violation of grand jury secrecy, which is a very, very big deal. So a story that started with one strange text message has spiraled into a fundamental challenge to legal authority and the norms of prosecution. It forces all of us to ask a pretty tough question. When the immense power of federal prosecution gets tangled up with political pressure, what guardrails are actually strong enough to protect the rule of law itself?